Now's the time for a great deal on a new Honda. It's time to take an adventure with rugged capability and commanding style. Check out the Honda Ridgeline, Pilot, or CR-V. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 3.99% APR on a 2025 Pilot, a 1.99% APR on a 2025 Ridgeline, or a 2.99% APR on a 2025 CR-V.
See dealer for financing details.
Think you found the one, but something feels off? If you've met someone online who seems too good to be true, they probably are. Before you fall for flirty texts and stolen profile photos, use truthfinder.com to run a background check. Find out if they're really a Nigerian prince, a hot co-ed, Mr. Perfect, or a total fraud within seconds. Use a name, email, or phone number to search for anyone to verify age, criminal and traffic info, and much more. Go to truthfinder.com/dating today to uncover who they really are.
Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Welcome to True Crime to Go. What can I get for you?
Yeah, I'm looking for a conspiracy, but just like I like my ribs, I want a lot of meat to it. You know what I'm saying?
Pull up to the second window and we'll see you next crime.
Welcome to True Crime to Go. I am John here with Jamie. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Didn't go out looking for a conspiracy theory today, but you know, I feel like every day I stumble upon a new one, and this one seemed interesting enough to bring to True Crime to Go.
We were on a group chat the other day with our good friend Chris, and I described you as a healthy mix of Hank Hill and Del Gribble because you, out of all my friends, are the one who loves conspiracy theories the most. So
I do love them, but I also like, it's not that I believe in them. I'm just very interested.
You're interested.
Yeah.
So that's why I said you're a healthy mix of Hank Hill's reality and Del Gribble's fantasy.
Okay.
So.
Love it. Yeah.
Why don't you get the ball rolling, man?
Yeah, this is going to take us back to one of the most famous criminals in American crime history, and that is Charles Manson. We've heard the basics. We've covered this. Summer of 1969, the Manson family brutally murdered Sharon Tate, among others. The infamous helter-skelter theory that said that Manson was trying to start a race war. But what if his story is even more complicated than that? What if he wasn't just a deranged cult leader, but instead the product of some government experimentation?
Well, that's exactly what journalist Tom O'Neill spent more than 20 years investigating. And he wrote a book called Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. So O'Neill explores a disturbing history of the Manson murders that may have been the unintentional result of CIA programs like MK and Operation Chaos. Now, we've talked about MK and I would love to talk more about it. So these programs were designed to infiltrate and destabilize counterculture movements, often using psychological manipulation and drugs like LSD as tools to help them gain control of people. Do you think so?
A lot of mind control stuff. And Charles Manson, Whitey Bulger, like there's a lot of different theories of criminals that have been involved. So how was Charles Manson involved, and did that lead to some of his violence? And this is one of those things that the deeper you dig, you can continue. There's so many rabbit holes to chase. We're going to try to keep it at a relatively high level here. So here's what we know. Manson did preach about a superior race, and he tried to talk about a future apocalyptic race war, and he convinced his followers to murder in order to start this out. But the district attorney who was prosecuting Manson, according to O'Neill, privately admitted to people that he didn't think Manson truly believed what he was saying. He was trying to use it to manipulate people as he himself was being manipulated.
So, that could raise some alarms, right? If Manson didn't believe in the race war, then why was he murdering people? What was the real motive? And that question is really the heart of O'Neill's book. And this is what is unsettling, or what at least he found unsettling. Manson had repeated brushes with the law, and they never seemed to stick. He violated parole, he used drugs openly, and even tried to travel internationally, and none of it led to his like he didn't get arrested for any of it, right? Instead, his parole officer, Roger Smith, advocated for him. In fact, he tried to get permission for Manson to move to Mexico, where supervision would have almost been impossible.
Yeah, so they're essentially just giving him almost unlimited leniency. So if this is the case, who was protecting Manson and why? And that question led O'Neill into the CIA's operations in the 1960s, like you said, MK Ultra and Operation Chaos, that were meant to really do mind control. And the pieces of mind control they were going for was A, the countercultural stuff, but B, also to be used in covert operations internationally with the Cold War and spies and that kind of thing.
So another one of the red flags to this story is his time at the Hyatt Asbury Free Clinic. That's where Manson would meet with his parole officer weekly, but it's also where Dr. Lois Jolly West worked. West was one of the lead psychiatrists that was involved in MK Ultra, and he conducted experiments involving LSD and behavior modification. The idea was to see if drugs could be used to manipulate people's actions and even push them to commit violent crimes on command. So imagine this, you've got a recently released ex-con like Manson, who's now embedded in this facility in the counterculture scene, and he met regularly at a clinic that also hosted one of the CIA's top mind control experts. Now that's beyond conspiracy thinking. It's a documented fact. So, now I guess the question is, was he a product of this experiment?
And O'Neill's pretty clear that there's no smoking gun here. He's just laying out a case that Manson was in the right place at the right time and did some things to maybe push some agendas that certainly made this look like he could have been a product of these experiments. And Operation Chaos, which launched the same year that Manson was released from prison, was designed to infiltrate particularly protest groups and turn public opinion against them. The goal wasn't just surveillance, it was to disrupt. The FBI had a similar mission. It was called COINTELPRO, and they targeted the Black Panthers. So was the CIA doing something similar to try to keep the people at bay?
Now think back to the Manson murders. At both the Tate and La Blanca crime scenes, the killers smeared their victims' blood on the walls, and they wrote messages like "Death to Pigs." And they also drew paw prints to mimic the Black Panthers symbol, and it looked like a political statement, like a warning. And that's exactly what Operation Chaos wanted. They wanted a public terrified of black radicals.
So here's the thing. O'Neill says that if Manson didn't believe in Helter Skelter and the goal wasn't really a race war, then maybe the entire point was for him to make it look like a race war. Maybe the entire thing, by thing, I mean Manson's agenda, whether it was consciously or not, was meant to stir fear between the races and crack down on the protest movements.
Now, the scariest part of this, I think, in my opinion, is if he was actually manipulated and he was a part of this experiment, then that means, yet again, we have a potential example of the government doing some operations that led to the death of innocent people. And that's not just a failure or oversight. That's a horror story.
Yeah, and we have to acknowledge that O'Neill never claims, again, no smoking gun, but he spent 20 years investigating this, following leads, going through archives, interviewing everybody related. And what he uncovered were inconsistencies in documentation for both Manson and these government programs, obvious, provable cover-ups of things that were happening, and all these facts that line up that, whether they are connected or not, are very disturbing coincidences.
So I don't think that he was able to definitely connect Manson to MK Ultra or Operation Chaos, but but he also couldn't definitively rule it out. And so that in and of itself is enough to make me question everything that we thought we knew about one of the most notorious murder cases in American history. And so now I'm like super curious. Is Manson a man who, yeah, he was living on the fringe. He was not a good guy, not trying to paint that narrative. But did everything that happened after all of his other crimes, like did all these murders happen because of a government program?
Yeah. Did the government use his placement in society for that? And I think that's the question. This story isn't about Charles Manson. It's about government control, government experimentation, and how the government tries to control the people. I think we have enough evidence over the history of the United States to say that does happen. But the question here is, was this an example of one? And if so, what does it mean for that era? What does it mean for racial relations at that time? And what does it mean for us today? So those are good questions, I think.
Yeah. And, the government has records, right? Like they've just released a bunch of records on the JFK story, but do they really have records? I mean,
yeah.
So we know that in the 1970s when MK Ultra was kind of exposed, if you will, all those documents were destroyed. So I don't know that this is a conspiracy theory that we'll ever really have an answer to unless someone that was involved in it leaks, what their knowledge is. And I don't think that's going to happen.
You mentioned my interest in conspiracies, and here's what I've come to realize, John. If you're doing shady crap, you're pretty careful not to write it down.
And if you're involved in the CIA, that means you're pretty smart. So you're not going to, you're going to be a little bit more careful than the average Joe about covering up your tracks.
Yeah. So I you're right. I don't know if we'll know about this, but it was an interesting one. And I know a lot of people are super interested in MK Ultra. Operation Chaos is one that I haven't dug as deeply into. So going to do that. But I thought people may be interested.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this one. We appreciate you sticking around.
This has been a crime story in 10 minutes or less.
Would you like crime with that?
You've listened to True Crimecast, distributed by Stoveleg Media. Check out stoveleg.com to find out more about your hosts and to find other podcasts to listen to. Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Now's the time for a great deal on a new Honda. It's time to drive smarter with high-tech features and excellent reliability. Check out the Honda Civic, Accord, or HR-V. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 4.99% APR on a 2025 Civic or a 3.99% APR on a 2025 Accord or HR-V.
See dealer for financing details. Exclude Civic Si and Type R.
Sick of going on dates with the one, only to find out later they're really a bum? If you're single and ready to mingle, but tired of swiping right on catfish, then you need truthfinder.com. Truthfinder confidentially searches millions of public records and gives you background reports with criminal and traffic data, divorce info, age, previous bankruptcies, and more. The more you know, the less time you blow on someone who isn't worth your energy. Go to truthfinder.com/dating to search now.